Welcome to the webinar.
Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the EFA Remodel Renovation Competition, a SAGE webinar presented by Lori Wegman, Eric McRoberts, Joyce Lenhardt, and Shannon Remaley. This session was originally presented at the Environments for Aging Conference earlier this month in Salt Lake City. If you've never attended the conference, I'd strongly suggest you consider attending in 2020. The content, connections, and inspiration you'll enjoy at EFA are well worth the financial investment to travel and attend the conference, and as SAGE members, you do enjoy a 10% savings for EFA registration. You will be muted throughout this webinar session. You'll have the option to type in any questions you have at the end by clicking on the question answer button, Q&A button at the top of your screen. We will answer those questions at the conclusion of the session as time allows. And of course, please keep your questions relevant to the topic being discussed. At this time, I'd like to invite our panelists to introduce themselves. Panelists, please give us a brief description of your experiences, your firm, and your role in these winning projects or in the competition. Lori, can you start out for us, please?
Sure. Lori Wegman with Wegman Design Group. I'm the president of that company, and we've been doing senior living for about 18 years. Our firm won for a project in 2014 for the Showcase Merit, and I've been a judge for 3 of these competitions.
Thank you. Eric?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. This is Eric McRoberts. I'm a partner with RLPS Architects in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. We're about a 90-man firm. And my experience, I came out of Temple University, actually, coincidentally graduated, I believe, a year behind Joyce Lenhardt, who is also a panelist today. And I've been in senior living now for 33 years. It's really been my entire career, and delighted to be on the call today. So thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Joyce?
Hi, this is Joyce Lenhardt. I'm a principal at Lenhardt Rogers Architecture Plus Interiors. We're located in Fort Washington, just outside of Philadelphia. And I graduated with Eric and at Temple University. I've been in senior living since I joined the firm in the mid-'80s. And as far as this project is concerned, I was involved from the beginning to the end, including going to job meetings. So we're a 9-person firm, so we have a lot of direct involvement of throughout the project, our projects.
Great, thanks, Joyce. And Shannon?
Hi, my name is Shannon Remaley. I'm Director of Living Interiors here at Meyer. We're located in Ardmore, just outside of Philadelphia. We're a 70-person firm, integrated architecture and interiors. I've been doing senior living for basically my entire career as well, so about 17 years now. And on this project, I served as the project manager and creative director for the design.
Great, thanks, Shannon. And I'll tell you that Rick D'Amico was to be our moderator today. Rick is VP of Development at the Bel Air Group. He is a SAGE board member, and he's the Remodel Renovation Competition jury coordinator on behalf of SAGE. He was the real champion behind the presentation at EFA as well as today's webinar, but just recently he needed to step away, and so I will moderate today. My name is Rob Simonetti, Design Director at SWBR and current SAGE President. And I've been involved in the Remodel Renovation competition as a juror as well as the Design Showcase for a number of years. SAGE is an AIA provider and is pleased to present AIA-approved webinars every month. These webinars are free to SAGE members, and participants in this course are eligible for 1 AIA learning unit. Please note that you must be registered for and logged into the webinar to receive the AIA credit or certificate of completion. SAGE will report credits earned by course attendees to AIA CES and will provide certificates of completion within 1 week if requested. If you did not enter your member number or request your certificate of completion upon registration, please email info@sagefederation.org. The information presented in today's presentation is protected under copyright. And of course, here are learning objectives and course description, which has satisfied AIA's criteria for credits, as well as attracted you to the webinar. So we're going to move right through those. So today's session, we will talk about the 10th annual Remodel Renovation Competition. We'll look at the competition objectives and the collaborators in the process. Lori will talk us through that process from the jury's perspective. And then, of course, we'll spend most of our time looking at the 3 award winners for 2018. And then at the end, we'll have a little review of the call for submissions as well as questions at the end of the session. So the EFA Remodel Renovation, again, now in its 10th year, really stems from the Design Showcase competition. And that's a competition for large scale, generally for large scale new build projects, often for large renovation projects of quite a large scale. So it was noted that there really wasn't a competition or a place in that competition for providers or design firms doing smaller renovations. And we all live in this world where we know that not all of us build new, and most can't. So there was really a gap in the ability to showcase a lot of great work being done. So this competition was created to recognize design excellence in single space renovations, and those can be any space in any type of community or at any level of care. So for the competition, this is really the brainchild and ownership of Emerald Exposition that runs and owns EFA Conference and Magazine. And each year they partner with Sage for Sage to provide the jury members to the design, both the design competitions, Design Showcase, as well as Remodel Renovation. So it's been a great partnership. On Sage's behalf, we really appreciate the ability to be involved and help shape the outcome of each of the competitions, and really bring the expertise of Sage to bear on which entries and submissions should really be brought forward and printed and recognized and thought of as inspiration for future projects. So today we'll be talking about the 3 winners, but just please note also that, I'm just going to go back a slide or 2, that all of the submissions this year are in the EFA Fall Magazine. And if you go to, at the bottom there, efamagazine.com, you'll find an archive of many, probably last 5 years worth of magazines, where you'll be able to find a number of years of the Remodel Renovation Competition, as well as a number of years of the Design Showcase Competition. So that's just a really valuable resource, actually, if you ever want to sort of see what's happening, what's been happening in the industry. And there are a number of people on the webinar today who are not actually Sage members yet, so we'd like to invite you to be Sage members, of course. And just a little bit about Sage, we'd like to talk about ourselves as a collaboration of like-minded individuals with a common goal of improving the physical environment for older adults. Speaking personally, I think it's a great organization. Of course, I'm biased, but really do see it as a group of people who are just so passionate and educated with a long history in the profession and in the industry, that are really an excellent resource. So if you're looking to better your projects and to better your practices, it's a great group to be involved with. Our members do include architects, designers, students, providers, consultants, developers, manufacturers of products in the industry, as well as regulators and educators. So there's a real breadth of our membership, which creates a lot of value. So aside from our free monthly webinars, we also have that conference discount I mentioned earlier for Environments for Aging, and some great networking events, namely the membership reception at EFA, as well as the membership reception, at Leading Age in the fall. And we also have great access to our partner here with EFA for the design competitions, as well as innovation competition and some other great work with them. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Lori to talk about the the process that the jurors went through for this competition.
Thanks, Rob. Let's go to the next slide and recognize the jurors for this year's competition. We'd like to thank the following jurors: Andrew Alden, Thomas Beal, Nicole Campbell, Nicole Casper, Meldrina Chapin, David Gray, Dave Huring, Sue Lair, Jody Mason, Russ McLaughlin, Scott Neal, Richard Ottens, Francis Petrick, Lori Reynolds, David Sowens, and Luann Foam-Helmick. And you can see that the jury is a diverse group of people. Providers, designers, research, and regulators made up this jury. And the juror process is done all remotely. And we'd like to thank Donna Paglia for organizing that process. And if you'd like to serve in the future as a juror, you can reach out to Lori Bridgman at SAGE and let her know of your interest, and you will be considered. Next. The EFA jurors also have a goal to recognize projects across the United States. And right now we're missing 6 of those states, so feel free to submit projects for next year. And just thought it was interesting that this year's 3 winners are all from the same state, which has never happened before.
Go Pennsylvania.
Okay. Again, Donna did a great job with Emerald for coordinating the jury process, and I thought I would just go over that with you a little bit to give you some insights as to what the jurors are seeing and how the competition breaks down from our perspective. This year, the process was improved. There's a format, a set of slides that the projects are required to fill out and submit. It's very hard to deviate from that, which makes the submittal and review process sort of a level playing field. And it takes out formatting and so forth out of the equation for the judges. Makes the judges judging a little bit easier when all the projects are organized in a similar way. This year there were 38 projects reviewed by the 20 jurors, made up again of this varied group of individuals, all looking at it from their perspective. So what happens is we go through the projects in a couple rounds. Round 1 is where the 20 jurors are broken up into 4 teams, if you will. And those teams then each review a series of 9 or 10 projects. The jurors really need to allocate maybe 2 or 3 hours at least to reviewing those projects. And we're given a form to fill out in terms of how we would rate those projects and what we see as the strengths and maybe opportunities for improvement for those projects. So those are comments that are kept in the file to review maybe if there comes to be a tie. After that, round 2 is the top 8 to 10 projects that are further reviewed by all the jurors. So all 20 get to see the top projects, and then again rate those projects, which equates to the bronze, silver, and gold awards. All 3 projects are represented here today. As Rob said, they get full editorial coverage on the project in the magazine. And I thought Rob, just go next. We'd review some of the principles that the jurors use in evaluating. These would be items that in your write-ups you would want to demonstrate in your presentation. And you'll see as we go through the winners, you'll hear the presenters demonstrate these attributes in their project. But physical safety and psychological security, environment as a therapeutic resource, holism and well-being of both of the individual and the community, individual rights and personal autonomy, communities and the relationships they have, supportive caregivers, function-enhancing technology, and creating and evaluating. Next. And now we're going to go through each of the projects The first project is the Bronze Award winner. It's the Atria Center City. It's the Life Guidance Dining Activity Area in Philadelphia. The design team is Meyer. Shannon Remaley is going to do the presentation, and the operator is Atria Senior Living. And with this, I'm going to turn it over to Shannon.
Thank you, Lori. I thought I'd give everybody a little bit of a background on the project and the location before we go ahead and get into the photos and a little bit about the design. So the Atria Center City is located in Philadelphia. It's a 5-story, approximately 170,000 square foot, 110 unit building. As I mentioned, it's in a prominent spot in the art district of the city. So close proximity to a lot of prominent landmarks, such as the Philadelphia Art Museum, Franklin Institute, Moore College of Art and Design, just to name a few of them. Before this building was converted to senior living, it was originally built as a lab building for the Franklin Institute. That conversion happened prior to this renovation. But just to give you an idea, it's an all concrete, poured concrete building. It has sets of large concrete columns that run down to the center of the building, and you'll see that I'll highlight that as we walk through some of the designs and the challenges that presented and how we overcame that. So Atria came to us with the program to renovate, upgrade, and also reprogram all the amenity spaces. So a few areas remained where they were, but a lot of it was, really looking at the program to meet the needs of today's residents, their families, and what the market is asking for. So prior to the renovation, the building consisted of all IL and AL units. And so the area that we focus on for this competition was incorporating a 15-unit memory care space, and that's on the second floor, and that's a secured area. And we see this very much representing just the overall demand for memory care in the market. So if you want to go to the next slide. Here you can see a before photograph of the space. You can see it's dated, it's not very well lit, and just generally unpurposeful. Go to the next slide. Here is the after photograph of what we turned into the memory care dining area. Life Guidance is Atria's name for memory care. So this is their dining area. You can see, in addition to the aesthetic and FF&E updates, you'll see we focused on expanding opportunities for the natural light. We did knock out a couple walls to get a few more windows to bring that natural light in. And also just the quality of the interior lighting. Also look behind the kitchen area where you see the refrigerator. Back behind there is a butler's pantry where we added a dumbwaiter, which goes down to the first floor. Again, this is on the second floor. Also, that dumbwaiter helped the staff to better serve the residents up here on the memory care floor, on the second floor. Go to the next slide. There we go. So again, similar to what we looked at on the other slide, just very dark, unpurposeful. This represents very much what the whole building looked like along the core of it. They had libraries on every floor. There wasn't really any sense of activity or a place of destination. Flip to the second. And you can also see in this photograph where you see those large columns on either side of the planters that we had to work with as you were running down the center. Also, the exterior of the perimeter of the building is mostly units, and the core was amenities, so lighting was a real focus of ours as we didn't have access to a lot of natural light. Next. And so here's a renovation of this area. So we turned this into the memory care lounge area. So we really looked at ways that we could open up the space. And then if you look at the columns, you can see them there on either side of the accent with the brick wall, but we really tried to then utilize those in our favor to create some sense of separation. We kept an open floor plan, but we used them to create a sense of separation and to also highlight some of our accent walls in there. Next. So here's just a floor plan of that second floor. Again, as I mentioned, the perimeter is mostly units. And then you'll see the orange area is the dining area as well as activity, which you do not see a photograph of. And then the center yellow area is where you have lounge areas. We generally like to see 2 areas for a lounge, more of an active and a passive. So, you know, accommodating the needs of residents and helping operations with that. Further down in some of the white core spaces, you have some support services, office, restrooms, staff areas, and then the end area is another therapy activity area for them. And so one thing that you don't see here is how we address the outdoor requirements for memory care in the state of Pennsylvania. Again, this is an urban project, so the building is 5 stories. So up on the 5th floor, there is a roof deck that was existing, and we renovated that and expanded it to have a secure area for memory care, as well as an area for the remaining AL and IL units in the building. Next. We thought we would just take a look at a few of the other spaces in the building. You can see here the top left photograph is the exterior of the building, so we did do some minor upgrades to that. Your top right photograph is the bistro area, which if you look at the photograph below it is the lobby. So we really worked with the operator here to open up spaces. A lot of it was very closed off. It was very separated. There was a lot of walls. So we really opened up the lobby and the bistro to be together so that that activity could really bleed into the lobby as people, residents, and families were coming into the door. They could feel that. And then the bottom left photograph is the dining area. That is one of the spaces that remained in its existing location. It's a great spot in the building. It's right on the corner overlooking the square in the city. But again, we opened that up and created some flexibility to the bar area from that. We also added some walker storage. If you can see in the middle of the photograph in the back there, we added some service stations that also serve as walker storage on the other side of it. So accomplishing 2 tasks there. There's also a larger walker storage room at the entrance of the dining room, but we see often that residents don't want to be that far from them, so we wanted to create multiple opportunities for storage there. Next. Lastly, you'll see some more of the activity spaces in the rest of the building. The top left is the library. Again, when we first got there, each floor had a library on it. And so what we did is we turned the 4th floor more into an entertainment amenity destination, and the library is there. And so we combined all those libraries into one where people can come and gather together. The top right is the technology lounge. The bottom right is their beauty salon, which very much came from inspiration of the city with brick. There's a lot of brick streets in Philadelphia, so we always try to find a connection to the community in our design intent, and there's an example of that. And then to the left is the theater, which I always think was an interesting challenge for our team, as the columns, as I had mentioned, that run through the core of the building. You can see that blue wall with the TV. Those columns are hidden in there, and the client had come to us with the challenge that they really needed a 20, 25 person theater, but with those columns it was difficult to accomplish that between any 2 sets of columns. So luckily technology was on our side, and we brainstormed together to come up with 2 screens on either side of that center blue wall, and there's the seating is mirrored on either side of it, so you have 2 sides functioning on the same sound system, and we were able to overcome that. Next. And so that I will turn it back over to Lori. That recaps some of the overview of our design. Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon. Okay, the judges really like this project. Rather than read all the comments, I'll give you sort of an overview of what the judges saw. The open, light-filled kitchen created an interactive food and dining experience. So the fundamental process of eating was seen as really good and changed. The aesthetics were really appreciated. There were just great aesthetics. The color palette, the good lighting, both decorative lighting and architectural lighting, and then the acoustical integration was really well done. and also the residential feel that this color palette gave. The functionality was very good, from good contrast of seating to floor, to contrast between countertops and cabinets, and then the way the space was organized to give segmentation to the space while keeping it open for different areas. This is particularly good as visual perception and, you know, disturbing and distracting activities can happen. It gives people with dementia different areas to go to. And also creates variety in their daily activities, as Shannon pointed out. So thanks, Shannon. Very well done. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Rob, let's go on to the next winner. The Silver Award goes to St. Ignatius Nursing and Rehabilitation Center. It dealt with the resident rooms in a very challenging situation. And Joyce Lenhardt, president of Lenhardt Rogers Architecture and Interiors, is going to present that. The operator is St. Ignatius Nursing and Rehab. And with that, I'll turn it over to Joyce.
Thanks, Lori. I'd like to also give some background. St. Ignatius is a standalone 170-bed skilled nursing and rehab facility located in a dense urban environment in West Philadelphia. It's a Catholic health ministry of the Felician Franciscan Sisters, and it serves all regardless of their ability to pay. It provides excellent care with limited means, and 90% of the residents who live here receive Medicaid. It's a 5-story building. The top floor is the convent for the sisters. The first floor is common and support and office areas, and there are 3 floors of nursing wings. Each floor has 2 wings, pretty traditional layout. So if you could go to the first slide, the stage was set when we had our first meeting, and our client at St. Ignatius said, those magic words, we want something drastically different. And to us, that was, we were very excited because not everyone is willing to embark on the journey that we did. Here's an existing room. You can see it's a medical model, semi-private room. Our residents share 1 bathroom. So the bathroom is in the foreground to the right. And so these 2 residents, as well as the residents in the adjacent semi-private room, share 1 bathroom. So the resident on the corridor has to walk through the window resident space and vice versa too. So there really is no privacy. When we joined, we started this project, St. Ignatius had been on a year-long journey of culture change. They had surveyed their residents, the families and the staff, and across the board, there were 2 items identified. One was a desire for choice, programmatically, dining choice, bathing, but the top item on the list was the need for privacy. And obviously the building wasn't providing it. So the challenge was really to align the building with the care that they wanted and needed to provide without losing too many beds, because this was losing a bed is a real financial hardship. So that was another part of the challenge. So if you could go to the next slide, this is the image of the new room. And as in the original room, we have the resident on the corridor side to the right and the resident on the window side to the left. In between the 2 is a partition with translucent, with a window with translucent glass, which allows for light from the window to spill into the corridor side area, as well as the fact that the partition doesn't go all the way to the ceiling. So that also allows light. Unfortunately, the windows are rather large, so it is pretty effective. The resident on the corridor side has a window onto the corridor, which just adds a little more sense of spaciousness, but there are blinds on that window for privacy. And some of the amenities within each of the resident spaces are there's in-wall oxygen and suction inside a custom cabinet, flat screen TV with remote control, individually controlled lighting, heating, and air conditioning. All the furniture is custom designed due to space requirements because we are working in a pretty tight spot. And the bed does not have a footboard, which also has a less institutional feeling and also gives a little bit more feeling of spaciousness. And the curtains, the entrances into this resident areas are have curtains, but you'll notice that they don't have the mesh on top. So we located sprinkler heads so we didn't have to have that mesh, and it's a little more of a residential feel. So if you could go to the next slide, you can see the existing bathroom, which pretty much speaks for itself, but it was not only shared by 4 people with two doors. The doors were so narrow that not all wheelchairs were able to even get into the room. When we did the new design, we were able to reuse the existing toilet location. If you could go to the next slide, this shows the new bathroom, which is fully accessible. It has a barn door, which slides quite easily, and residents are actually, many of them are able to use it themselves. There is storage for each resident within the bathroom. And obviously the residents can each get to the bathroom without walking through anyone else's space. So the next slide, it shows the original floor plan. It shows that the nursing areas on the left side of the slide are the nursing areas, as well as the assisted bathing spa, which is one of the things that they wanted to change, not having to have people go through the public areas to bathe. On the right side of the existing plan is the activity room. The original rooms work with the tiny shared bathroom and the semi-private rooms. And then in the new plan, you could just flip to the next slide. The common areas are on the left side of the screen. We chose to locate those on the sunny side of the building. The St. Ignatius gave up 5 beds in order to make way for this living room, dining room, and kitchen area at the entrance to the wing. And then on the right side of the screen, you'll see the assisted bathing spa, which is at the end of the corridor in a much more private location. The enclosed workspace was minimized. There's a workroom, which is identified as number 10 on the screen, with some private work areas. There's also identified as number 4 next to the kitchen. There's a charting spot for a doctor charting or visiting professionals. But the staff was encouraged to use the common areas for charting and do the limited space that really has worked pretty well for them. The workroom identified as number 11, we measured each piece of equipment and found a location for it because we were so limited, our space was so limited. If you could go to the next slide, this is a detail of the resident room. You can see the four residents sharing the bathroom, and there is a center entrance corridor. In that corridor are the individual med cabinets for each resident. There was, in addition to, there was a lot of discussion with the Department of Health about this renovation. And in the end, we were able to convince them that while this wasn't technically a private room, it was so much better. What we were doing was so much better than what they currently had, that they agreed to approve it. But there was a lot of back and forth. We had some individual meetings with Charlie Schlegel, the head of the Department of Health, and it was, I guess it was somewhat of a negotiation. We did have to prove that we had enough, we met the requirements of a semi-private room. The average square footage for each resident is 94 square feet. And we had to also prove that we could get the beds in and out of the spaces, so that they could get out to the main corridor. I have a few more slides of some of the other areas. If you could go to the next one. This is shows the common area on the left, and then the shared the bathing area, bathing spa on the right. We also did some outdoor spaces which aren't shown. We designed a healing garden and a solarium addition to the building, so residents do have some pretty nice outdoor space in what is a pretty dense urban environment. So that's all. I'll turn it back to you, Lori.
Thanks, Joyce. I think the jury recognized your challenges of renovating in such a tight space without losing too many beds to create privacy and dignity for the residents. The jurors appreciated the fact that how hard the design worked to minimize the institutional features, such as the medicine cabinets, the gases were hidden, you don't see carts and equipment, everything has its place. That takes a lot of work. And then the use of the translucent panels to maximize daylight for all four residents was really a clever idea, and helped again with daily activities. The plan changes that you made to relocate the activity, the dining rooms and the kitchen closer to the entry and the nurse and doctor charting area was also seen as a real plus. And then the benefit of that was adding greater privacy to the spa area. So well done, Joyce, and congratulations.
Thank you, Lori.
Okay, now for our gold winner, it's Waverly Heights Casual Dining and Coffee Shop Renovations, again in Pennsylvania. And RLPS Architects, McRoberts, I'm sorry, is going to take us through the presentation. The operator is Waverly Heights Limited.
Thank you, Laura.
Yep.
Yes, again, just a quick background on this project. Waverly Heights is about 10 miles outside of Philadelphia proper, to the kind of northwest side. It's in an area called Gladwin. It probably were the original kind of suburbs of Philadelphia, a lot of rolling hills, very wooded, really beautiful campus. They've been in existence since 1986. And interestingly, there's a manor house that's on the property that was the original house of one of the Pennsylvania Railroad executives. I think I had his name here, Samuel Ray. And that house now has really become kind of the stepping stone for many of the buildings that have happened since then in terms of creating a character and a feel that was somewhat similar. And certainly this project took some of its cues from that. So the project was actually a larger project that involved the upgrade of many of the commons in this building. There was a renovation done about 20 years ago in the late 90s where they updated some of the dining, some of the wellness features, and many of those areas were tired. So I think we've all probably seen communities similar to this where just kind of in need of a facelift, and certainly the approaches we take to dining today are much different than they were 20 years ago. So there was a pool renovation to this project. There was a fitness, wellness, spa component as well. We even had a little bit of independent living to help kind of support financially this project. But what was submitted here for the renovation portion was really the dining component. And what Waverly Heights had previously was what most communities 20 years ago would have had. They had kind of a more formal dining component to their campus. And they had 20 years ago added what they called a coffee shop. And that coffee shop essentially felt like a cafeteria. It was dark, didn't have a lot of daylight, had a lot of stainless steel, it had a tray slide. So a lot of those things just weren't up to speed with what's happening today, and certainly what a lot of people coming into senior living are expecting in today's world. So if we could go to the next slide. So this is the project, and let me also tell you about the project team. Greg Scott from our office was involved in the project, as well as Carson Parr, who kind of took the design and kind of followed through all the way through as project architect on this. We worked very closely with Tom Garvin and his staff, who were very involved in the design and kind of the way this shaped out. But what you're seeing on the slide now is what the original kind of coffee shop dining felt like. And you can see it feels a bit dated, you know, colors that you would expect to have seen from 20 years ago, but typically not what we're seeing today. And then if you go to the next slide, you can see that same coffee shop, which has now been turned into a cafe. Some things that are noticeable right away: very much more open, brighter colors, a lot more daylight coming into the space, some elevated ceilings just to give it a more spatial feel. And then I think what changed this considerably is the fact that we brought a lot of the cooking right out in front where residents could see the chefs and interact with the chefs as the preparation of the food was taking place. We tried to get away from the tray slides, more of a scatter system. There are a number of stations that happen around here. A lot of the equipment, very contemporary kind of equipment, the large brick hearth, which you see in the middle of the plan there, the round element, as well as a rotisserie and some other equipment that really allows a lot of flexibility with what the chefs can prepare on a daily basis and how they can change the menu from week to week. So there's a lot of variety. Okay, go ahead. And then here you're seeing the kind of the other end of the dining. This was their more formal dining. It was within a space that had a very high vaulted ceiling, a lot of dark beams and dark finishes to the ceiling. So if you go to the next slide, I think you'll see that what we tried to do is really, again, lighten it up. We brought a lot more different materials into the project, a lot more color than there was previously. A lot of the trim went to more of a white trim, which helped to lighten up the space. And in this case, essentially what they were doing is creating multiple dining venues, where before they had two, they really, for the most part, have four right now. You can serve yourself from the cafe. You can come over to this sunroom, which is kind of an indoor-outdoor space. It feels very different. It's great for smaller settings and private events. And then go to the next slide. And then again, here's just a picture of what the previous coffee shop looked like. I mean, it served its purpose. It worked for many years, but obviously it was in very much need of an upgrade. Okay, next slide. And then again, here's just one of the other serving counters on the other side of the cafe. They've got a coffee kind of shop component to this with pastries, a lot of pre-prepared foods that people can take back to their rooms as well. Obviously a lot of different types of finishes, some hard finishes, some soft finishes. And we really wanted to make sure also that acoustics were addressed in this project. So acoustics were well placed throughout the dining rooms. So that's no longer really an issue where previously there were a lot more hard surfaces. Next slide. And then here's a plan, just to kind of walk you through. You can see again, the center of the plan has the circular kind of brick hearth as kind of an anchor. The countertops and all of the different food stations kind of radiate around that. To the left of that is kind of your casual dining where people can serve themselves. In the upper left corner then is that sunroom that I was mentioning that is an addition to the plan. They chose to do that instead of an open outdoor terrace because they thought it could be used much throughout the year versus just in the warmer months of the summer, fall, and spring. Above the hearth is the slightly more formal area where you can still sit down and get more of a waitress style service. And then they still felt, because this has always been a fairly formal community, they still wanted that notion of fine dining. So the space at the very top center is their Carlton room, which is their fine dining room. You still dress up, suit and tie to come in there. They can provide special meals. They even charge extra for those meals, and residents fully partake in those, feeling like they're getting a very high, kind of almost New York style restaurant caliber meal within that zone. So it really gave them a lot of flexibility in terms of different zones for dining, different food preparations, and the opportunity is to really manipulate the dining rooms as needed for different events. Okay, next slide. Next slide.
Hold on, Eric, we're having some technical difficulties.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, and the only thing I would say is that before they get to the jury comments is that the project always is a challenge with residents. They often will feel that nothing needs to really change. It's fine the way it is, but this has been so well received by the residents, and I think more than anything, I think it's also the family now of the residents coming in that really love to come into the space because it feels like any cafe you'd be in downtown Philadelphia, New York City, or any place like that. So it's really been well received by the residents at this point. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Some of the jury comments centered around the food service component, which is, of course, extremely inviting and does provide what we consider real choice, which enhances the daily lives of these residents and, as Eric said, their family. The design aesthetics are also very well done with a good use of the color palette, the different materials. It's very balanced. The decorative accents and features in each of the areas, again, help distinguish those spaces, such as the fireplace and the fire pit oven area. And I think the judges also appreciate the knowing what it took to get this project done, the type of collaboration with the dietary staff, with the operator team, to make this kind of drastic change takes a commitment on the whole team's part, and the design really demonstrates what can happen with that kind of partnership. So well done, Eric, and congratulations.
Thank you. I also wanted to mention that Scopos was the food service consultant who helped us with a lot of those design decisions in the kitchen area. We were very pleased with what they came up with.
Thanks. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the opportunities for this year's competition. You have an opportunity to have your project recognized. The reservations are due on May 10th, presentations due June 3rd, along with your entry fee. And again, the top 3 projects are highlighted with all entries receiving a 1/4-inch page gallery spot. Next. Again, some of the tips from a juror's perspective that you might want to consider in putting your submissions together is great legible plans with good keys and descriptions of what's really occurring in the area. Great photos, which really make sense if you can get the exact picture of before to match your after picture. The judges can really see the impact that your design has had. And then in your copy, define, what the difference maker is and what impact that has, again, based on the criteria for that we outlined in one of the first slides. And it's helpful to have the story written, maybe not by the marketing team, but by the project team, where the jury can really see the project team's insights and the challenges from their perspective. Next.
All right, well, thank you, panelists. That does conclude the AIACES education portion of the course. We do have a few minutes to go through some questions that you may have. You should see a question and answer button in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. And if you click on that, you'll be able to type in a question for us. And I see that we do have some questions. Let me open those up. For Eric, regarding Waverly, were there concerns that you needed to address from the residents on the costs of the project?
Yeah, thank you. I think whenever you go through a project like this where you're essentially kind of going in and gutting some of the common portions of the community, whether it be dining or fitness, wellness, it's always a challenge. As I said, oftentimes the residents live there, feel that it's fine the way it is. They've been using it for years. They're comfortable with it. So I think in a case like this, it really goes to the owner, to the design team, but really more so the owner to really make sure that the residents are on board with what you're doing, that they're seeing the vision, the long-range vision of how it's going to improve the community as a whole. And I think in this case, they did a great job of getting kind of buy-in by the residents. We did focus groups where residents got to feel like they had their input, they were being heard, and I think that goes a long way for allowing a project like this to move forward. Projects like this are costly though, and I think in the back of most residents' mind is that once this project is completed, ultimately they're probably in some way going to be paying for it through their fees. And I think Waverly did a great job of convincing them that their fees would not go up. This was something that simply needed to be done for the community so that it could proceed into the future. And I think that really helped the residents to feel like, okay, we're on board with this project, and it went smoothly.
That's great, thank you. And then for Shannon, regarding Atria, were there ways that you were able to integrate the outside community into the design and the process and the product?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think we're always aiming to integrate the outside community into the projects that we're working on and designing. But as everyone knows, operations needs to be a part of that. And so here we were able to do that. As I'd mentioned, the project is located right in the arts district of the city. And up on the 5th floor, we did design an art gallery, and across the street is the Moore College of Art and Design. And so we were able to work with operations in that college to create an art gallery that students come in and do rotating art shows and presentations for the residents and really get them engaged in that. So it's been really successful, and everyone's enjoying it. So
that's great. Thanks, Shannon. And then we have a couple questions for Joyce, actually. Was the private room designed as an isolation room? Question one. And then number two, were there any regulatory requirements regarding access, minimum clearances around the beds in the rooms?
To address the private room, yes, the private room was designed as an isolation room, and so it has the air requirements, et cetera. And the clearances were met. We did have to show dimensions around the beds in order to get the approval. So the answer to that is yes.
Okay, great. And then another question for the whole group, from Anne, who thanks you for an impressive presentation and an impressive group of projects. And she is wondering if any of the projects specifically focused on energy savings, such as in lighting or other measures.
Well, this is Eric. I mean, I think all I would say is that this project wasn't specific to that, but I think that what we're seeing is that the entire lighting package now is, for the most part, or almost entirely LED lights, which obviously is using a lot less light source or light energy than previous systems. So I think that's where we've captured kind of our savings, being a little more sustainable. But other than that, in the case of Waverly, there really wasn't anything beyond that was done.
I can echo Eric's comment. In our renovation project, because we were going to use such more energy efficient lighting, we were able to provide the additional electrical requirements for the kitchen area, et cetera, without having to expand the panels. So it was we saved and then used it, but of course in a renovation, it's pretty typical, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'll just add on to that in similar fashion. As I'd mentioned, the amenity spaces in the core of the building didn't have a lot of access to natural light, so replacing light fixtures was a key focus for us, and we replaced every single light in the building with LED. So it was a focus for us.
Yeah, this is Eric. I would just add to what they both said, in that, you know, this is a renovation competition, and we're looking at kind of before and afters. And I think one of the things that you'll see in all of the befores is just how dark those projects were, whether it be a resident room or a dining room, or in two cases, dining rooms. And I think we can certainly adjust the finishes. We can add a lot more color. We can add a lot more texture to a room. But none of that really makes any difference unless we add the appropriate levels of lighting, which tend to be a lot more than even our code books tell us we need to do, because we all understand that in a senior environment, you can't go wrong with more light. It just helps everybody. And I think, and you saw in all three of these cases, just the difference in lighting made a huge difference in just the feel of the project.
All right, great. Thank you all. And Joyce, a question again regarding the isolation room, and is that typically kept vacant for when it's needed?
Not typically. I believe that because there are 3 floors and 6 wings, each one has a private room. So they do have multiple options when an isolation room is needed.
Okay, great. All right, well, that looks like it. We've satisfied our participants and their questions. So with that wraps up today's presentation, Environments for Aging Remodel Renovation Competition, review of the 2018 competition. We'd like to thank all of you for joining us today, and especially thank you to the panelists for sharing your great projects and your great insights and all the valuable information. We certainly hope that you all have enjoyed today's session and have found it worthwhile. We value your input and look forward to hearing any comments you may have. At the conclusion of the webinar, you will be prompted to take a quick survey. If you could, please provide comments or suggestions, which we can use to help guide us to provide interesting topics for the next sessions. And please stay tuned for email announcements of upcoming webinars. On behalf of SAGE, thank you all for joining us.